Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here today in this beautiful city and a great state of Ohio. It's a privilege to address such a distinguished audience. The encouragement and support from Somali Americans in Columbus and Ohio meant so much to me and the Somali government. First, I wanted to thank the President and CEO of Columbus Council of World Affairs, Mr. Patrick Terrain, and his team for making the event and the opportunity for me to visit Ohio possible. There's no better place than Columbus to have this conversation that we are having today. Here you have the second largest population in America. Of course, the first is Minneapolis. This great city, its leadership and community have welcomed the positive contribution of the Somali American. My gratitude goes to the city officials in collaboration with county and state leadership who created and facilitated a suitable environment to the Somali immigrant community to settle, work, and raise their families. I have no doubt that these new Americans are enriching the lives of Ohioans and are contributing to the betterment of society at large. And lastly, I would like to thank Franklin University for hosting us this evening. I'm not here to talk about the wonderful Somali community here in Columbus. Rather, I would like to share with you some of my experience while I was a leader of war-torn nation of Somalia. Although we do not have time for lengthy discussion, I will try my best to share some of the major points so that you can understand conditions on the ground in Somalia. Unfortunately, when you think about Somalia, three images come to mind: famine, Al-Shabaab, the violent religious extremist affiliated with Al-Qaeda, and piracy. Corruption, lawlessness, and ineffective government have been endemic. Tragically, past governments, especially the last 20 years, have failed to provide stable government, law and order, functioning public institutions that deliver basic services and ensure the welfare of its citizens. This is a true picture of Somalia. Today, there's a widespread famine in Somalia that's threatening the lives of millions of people. By definition, famine is a man-made phenomenon. While the entire Horn of Africa has been experiencing the worst of the cyclical drought that impact every decade, in fact, it's worse. The famine in Somalia was exacerbated by Al-Shabaab, reign of terror, in area under their control and lack of effective central government, as well as slow reaction from the international community. Although it may sound anomalous, a year ago I was honored to lead the most dangerous country on earth and take the challenge to risk my life in order to bring peace and stability to the forgotten nation of Somalia. My team, the Council of Ministers, and I have made great strides in improving both security and many political and humanitarian problems which face Somalia. Improving security in the capital, Mogadishu, was my first priority in order to ensure the basic functioning government and to reestablish the rule of law for the rest of the country. Remember, all institutions had collapsed and there was no legitimate system of government for over 20 years. Our most immediate problem was simple bureaucratic issue, meaning that transitional federal government security force were not getting paid, nor were our civil servants. This helped morale to go down and members of TFG forces to leave service altogether, or worse, join the opposition forces, providing an opportunity for Al-Shabaab to strengthening its reach and establish safe haven where they could recruit, organize, and spread their extremist views in order to overthrow the government and destabilize the neighboring countries. Many of these extremists are foreign fighters. Like Afghanistan, Somalia became another base of Al-Qaeda because of its weak central government. My team, the Council of Ministers, and I have crafted an action plan to boost our soldiers' morale by providing needed rations, paid salary on time, and provided medicine for wounded soldiers, and improved facilities for their care. A comprehensive program to educate our forces and giving them a reason and purpose for fighting against Al-Shabaab was instituted to prevent brainwashing campaign from our opponent targeting public servants. We have provided opportunity for promotion, extra stipends and bonuses for hard work, pension if injured or retired, and recognition for public service for bravery. We secured salaries for tens of thousands of our security forces as well as civil servants for the first time in a very long time. This helped improve the image of public service and government in Somalia. For the first time, our public realized that well-managed government, even with the existential fight against Al-Shabaab, can provide basic governmental services for its citizens. We mobilized the public to support our troops. The TFG and 9,000 strong African Union troops started to make some headway and incremental gains of territory previously controlled by extremists. These territories include strategic locations in the capital as well as towns and villages near the Kenyan and Ethiopian borders. This war caused a lot of death and destruction. My heart goes out to those TFG and AMISOM soldiers and innocent civilians caught in the crossfire who lost their lives to free the country from Al-Shabaab terrorists. Many of the Al-Shabaab foreign fighters, along with brainwashed local Somali youth, died in these operations. One of the Al-Qaeda's most dangerous operatives, Fazul Abdullahi Mohammed, a native Comoro island of the coast of Africa, was killed this June by Somali security force at the security checkpoints in Mogadishu. He was the mastermind of 1998 bombing of US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, which killed 224 people and wounded thousands. His death was a major blow against Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda, following the killing of bin Laden in Pakistan. I commended these great achievements and the good work of the TFG forces and their collaboration with African Union forces. In truth, the United States and the international community have denied Al-Qaeda another friendly base in Somalia by supporting and defending the TFG to function and stand on its own feet. However, the support must be increased to build Somali security forces so that we can continue to defend the nation against Al-Shabaab. TFG forces need continuous recruitments, training, and better equipment to face a global supported enemy. The U.S. must take the lead in assisting government efforts to reconciliation and the prevention of a humanitarian crisis exacerbated by the absence of strong central government. Of course, you cannot separate political and security matters from one another because they interface or reinforce each other. Since the collapse of central government in 1991, the nation went through political chaos and endless civilian conflict. This resulted in the loss of countless lives, the destruction of property, the displacement of tens of thousands of people, and the flight of nearly 1 million people to the refugee camps of neighboring Ethiopia and Kenya. About 16 reconciliation was attempted to resolve the political crisis and form broad-based and inclusive government and bringing back basic services. Nearly 10 years ago, the transitional government was formed with the help of international community. Yet, conflict within outside of the government and continue to undermine efforts to deal with the real problems facing the country. There have been 8 prime ministers in the 10 years since the transitional government was established. On average, each government lasted for only 14 months. There was no continuity to rebuild and stabilize public institutions that work for the common good. Gridlock and stalemate characterizes Somali politics and always resulted in formation of new government. This is what we faced when we landed in Mogadishu. We were forced to start from scratch. And unfortunately, my successor also was forced to do the same. My team and I were rightfully portrayed as a good managers and educated technocrats. And our detractors contended that we were not sophisticated Somali-style politicians. However, we were faced with a real existential crisis and endless conflict in Somalia with the unimaginable toll on human lives. And in such a situation, you need good managers who understand how to bring diverse people together and respond to resolve conflicts before they become large-scale catastrophe. The drought of the Horn of Africa could have been prevented from becoming famine, killing and displacing tens of thousands of our people if all of our efforts were directed at the natural disaster. There's a wise saying, surround yourself with the good and righteous people. They can only raise you up. In my short tenure, my government earned the respect of its people and bringing back hope and helping improve living conditions for the Somali people. Let me introduce you to some of my cabinet members who made this possible. Honorable Dr. Abdinur Sheikh Mohammed, former Minister of Education, and Honorable Bono, former Minister of Constitution, and reconciliation. Please, collectively, please give them a round of applause for their sacrifice and the noble work they have performed in the very tough environment. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you. In this journey, we also lost a great friend and a colleague. Former Minister of Interior, Abdishakur Sheikh Hassan, who was assassinated by Al-Shabaab terrorists at his home. May God rest his soul in peace. Although I had a different mission to save Somalia, I was not immune from the culture of political entanglement. While we were approaching the end of the 8-month transitional government, which probably was supposed to end in August 2011, I was caught up among self-serving politicians who wanted to maintain the status quo and remain in power. Political infighting resumed last February when the parliament unilaterally extended its term in office for 3 more years in violation of the National Charter. This was widely condemned by the international community. My government also expressed disagreement with the leaders of the parliament who rushed this legislation to passage without our input. We favored only 1-year extension for all institutions and delay in the election for President and Speaker, August 2012. This 1-year extension would allow us to complete the unfinished transitional task, including parliamentary reform, drafting the Constitution, and bringing peace and stability to the country. In May, the United Nations Security Council put out a presidential statement which stipulated that any action in relation to the way forward for Somalia must be unanimously agreed by the Speaker, the President, and the Prime Minister. On June 9th, a deal was reached in Kampala after months of political infighting within the TFG leadership to postpone the election for 1 year. And as a consolation prize for 1 year of feuding parties, relieving me of my duty as a Prime Minister. Although this so-called Kampala Accord cost me my job, I have a different perspective as to the way the deal was struck. I had 2 options: either to fight and be part of the ongoing political problem, or to negotiate in a good faith so that my team, like Bono and Dr. Abdinur, could continue our effort to eradicate Al-Shabaab and its ally Al-Qaeda from Somalia and to stabilize the rest of the country. I think I made the right decision in stepping down for the interest and well-being of the country. This is evident in that 8 days after a successor government was sworn in, Al-Shabaab vacated the city, the capital, which is very much now in the hand of the TFG. This military success would not have happened or would not have been achieved if the political wrangling continued, with me sticking to staying in power at all costs, which was the political tradition in Somalia. And the humanitarian condition for the general public could have been worsened. Part of the new deal reached in Kampala was to end the TFG, Transitional Federal Government, by August 2012, which we have advocated for so long, compared to the 3 years extension that the Parliament wanted. All things being equal, The biggest winner here, at least my opinion, is I think the Somali people who will in need or will in the end, and I'm hopeful, will have a reformed and leaner parliament, a new constitution, and permanent government by 2012. My successor, Prime Minister Abdul Wali, whom I have a great respect, will be able to march forward in the realization of permanent state by August 2012, with all our support. In retrospect, the 20th century has not been good for Somalia and the Somali people. Beginning with the conflict between Somalia and the British in the early 20s, and ensuing colonial encroachment of Africa, dividing Somalia into sub-components of Italian, French, and British Somaliland, the Somali people did not get right opportunity for progress, development, and nationhood. The autocratic system of governance instituted in Somalia after independence led to corruptive practices, nepotism, and endless ethnic conflict that continue to hamper efforts to reconstruct and to reconstitute the state. A lasting resolution to the Somali conflict requires, first and foremost, that its citizens peacefully reconcile their differences, and the international community support their effort to reestablish a democratic state at peace with itself and can become a partner for peace with the regional government and the international community. My thoughts on the path toward achieving that kind of Somalia will be made public in the near future. And thank you very much. I'll take questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Before we take questions, I did just want to read a proclamation from the governor for the state of Ohio. Greetings. I would like to extend my congratulations to the Columbus Council on World Affairs and those gathered to explore and discuss the culture and politics of Somalia. As you know, Ohio has a diverse population of ethnic groups, and Columbus is home to the second largest Somali population in the United States. We welcome the Somali community and appreciate the contributions you are making to our great state. I would like to extend a Buckeye welcome to Mr. Mohammed Abdullahi Mohammed, former Prime Minister of Somalia. Thank you for taking time to inform Central Ohio's Somali community and others, interested individuals, about the political and economic climate in Somalia. Your service in Somalia from October 2010 through June 2011 and your efforts to bring stability have been recognized there and internationally. My best wishes to everyone for a successful series. Sincerely, John R. Kasich, Governor, State of Ohio.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And now we do have time for questions and answers as well. You can raise your hand and we have a mic that will come to you. You can also write on your paper. I also like to mention we have viewers through who are watching live through webcast, perhaps here and around the world. So some questions may be coming through there. I'll ask the first question, and then did I have another one who's after me maybe here? Okay. The first question is about U.S. foreign policy as it relates to Somalia and the countries around it, or at least the countries that have an interest in Somalia. Can you help us understand a little bit about your perspective on the U.S. policy as it relates to Somalia?
Well, it's known that definitely U.S. is interested in to go after global terrorism. And Somalia became one of the area that Al-Qaeda interested in because, as I said, Al-Qaeda is looking for a place like Somalia that has weak government in which they can establish a base to regroup so they can attack to the neighboring countries and the rest of the world. So that is basically well known that U.S. policy is to address the terrorism issues in Somalia. But also, I would like to say that Somalia has not been treated like places like Afghanistan, which has a similar characteristics like Somalia. Of course, Afghanistan has a weak government. It's a sectarianism, which has a clan-based system. And of course, it has become a hub or attracting area for Al-Qaeda. So Somalia probably meet the same characteristics. Somalia has been lacking a central government for 20 years. And of course, Somalia has been divided by warlords and sectarian mindset. And it's a good place for Al-Qaeda to recruit and to, as I said, to have a base. But unfortunately, the United States is not paying the same attention as Afghanistan, because supposedly if today the Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan is being crushed or defeated, the remaining of Al-Qaeda definitely will be going places like Somalia, which is basically a similar environment in which they can flourish. So I was expecting that the United States provide a similar support to the TFG in order to eradicate and destroy and defeat Al-Qaeda simultaneously, while the NATO and the United States fighting in Afghanistan. Of course, there must be another simultaneous operations should take place in Somalia in order to defeat both bases at the same time. And of course, the Somali government, I believe, and Somali people have been really grateful for what the United States have provided in terms of military and financial support. But definitely we were anticipating or hoping that the United States should step up more and provide more assistance to the government so the government can build its security to defend itself from those extremists. And I'm hoping, probably with your influence and with everybody here, to question the United States to step up. Why the United States is not stepping up and helping more the TFG in order to fight effectively the extremism and Al-Qaeda in Somalia. So to answer your question, yes, the relationship is good, but hopefully we would like to see that the United States to put Somalia in the same category as Afghanistan.
We had a question here, and then here.
All right. First of all, I wanted to thank you from Prime Minister for coming here. It's really great respect that you come and visited the Somali population here in Columbus. My question has a two-part to it. The first part is, as we all like to believe, Somalia is a sovereign nation, but it doesn't act like a sovereign nation. I mean, as we speak right now, the Somali territorial rights is being violated. There are Kenyan troops inside Somalia, while the Somali government is actually denying that they are there. So I wanted to get your thoughts about that. And the second part is what is being done about the parliament. I mean, they're 550-member parliament, and Somalia is only like, what, 6 or 7 million. So, and 90% of them are illiterate. They can't even read or write. What are they doing there? A lot of them are just, former warlords that have committed mass murders. So it seems that Somalis are between a rock and a hard place. The rock being the Al-Shabaab terrorist organization, and the rock being corrupt politicians that are in there just to enrich themselves.
First of all, let me correct you. Somalia is not 6 or 7 million. It's over 10 million. Secondly,
The microphone.
oh, it's okay?
Maybe just lean that.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay. Secondly, one of the transitional tasks is to reform the parliament. which comprise of, you're right, 550. And the TFG cannot afford to provide what those 550 need. So definitely it should be reduced quite a bit. I agree. And that's basically the work of the TFG right now, to do that before next year election. With regards to your question about the Kenya invasion, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. The Kenyan government and TFG have very good relationship. And they both understand the danger of Al-Shabaab. And we have been collaborating and cooperating in terms of fighting Al-Shabaab near the Kenyan and Somali border. And as a result, the Kenyan government trained close to 2,000 Somali soldiers and provide equipment. And a few months ago, even when I was in office, with the help of Kenyan government, we captured the town of Elwak and Dobling with the help of Kenyan government. And we've been having that kind of relationship in order to deal with the threat of Al-Shabaab, which always vow to go beyond the border and harass the Kenyan government. So that's the relationship. As far as the recent issues concerned, the recent developments concerned, I don't know the arrangements between the TFG and the Kenyan government, but I know that there's about 2,000 Somali soldiers in that area. And we appointed and named a general who will lead that army. So I don't know, to be honest with you, the extensive involvement of the Kenyan government, but I know that we have a substantial amount of TFG forces in the area.
Here, and then in the back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, for coming here and informing us about what is happening back home. A lot of Somalis applaud you for your hard work for the 6 months and for appointing one of the best among us, including guys like Abdinur and other guys like Bono and among others. My question to you is, as we know today, as of today, there had been even fighting with Al-Shabaab and people dying because of conflicts and stuff. And there are also a great famine that is happening all across the nation. So is there any intent, are you as a, you and you among your fellow colleagues in this cause, are there things that you are guys thinking about as of now to go back home or do anything? Or was this it? Are you guys coming back here and staying here and enjoying the good life here in America?
You are not the first one who asked that question. Well, we have a responsibility, all of us, including yourself, to do something about the situation in Somalia, because Somalia has been chaos and lawlessness. And the reason, partly because we all here, most people who are educated are doing well in the United States or Europe, and they have mortgages and other responsibility, family obligations, and they cannot afford to go back unless you wanted to sacrifice like we did. We have still, I believe, some responsibility to contribute. How much? Probably We have to, all of us, work on that, because this is not only responsibility for Mohammed or Abdel-Noor or Bono. I believe this is each and every Somali responsibility to positively contribute his or her homeland. Our people have been suffering, and Somalia is becoming, I would say, has been the worst, the worst country in the world in terms of corruption and rule of law. So the only, I believe, way to save Somalia is that if we, all of us, one way or another, to go back, or if you want to stay here, to contribute financially and help the situation in Somalia. So we all have that responsibility.
For this question, if I may ask, the average Columbus person, I think, doesn't understand the Somali community that's here, in my opinion. And add to that a lot of press around the recruitment of young Somali youth in Columbus, Minneapolis, for Al-Shabaab. Is that a threat that we should be worried about as a community, that this recruitment?
I think those days is over, because Al-Shabaab was winning. And we all know that in politics, everybody loves the winners and hate the loser. So they were winning. And the more they capture new territory, for them it's more recruitment. And of course, they have a very effective propaganda machine. And one of their ways to promote what they do is that they taken over Somalia. And since they're winning, everybody, probably maybe the youth, who many times are not mature, fell into that trap. But since they start losing, especially when we came to office, even our TFG soldiers never go and defect to the other side. As a matter of fact, Al-Shabaab militia were joining to the TFG forces because we start paying salaries. And as soon as they come to on our side, we start giving them stipends and provide food and shelter and ask them to communicate their former comrade on the radios and explain to them the life they are in, how we welcome them, provide what they need. And as a result, more Al-Shabaab fighters join to the government side. So because we are winning, we really fought hard in terms of public opinion by communicating with our population very effectively and compete them in the public opinion by portraying them as foreigners who are not Islam, because Islam does not permit to kill or destroy. And that's exactly what they have been doing all along. So since we start winning and capturing more territory and earning the respect and support of our population, both inside in Somalia and overseas, I believe their recruitment in overseas has been diminished and reduced drastically. I know that for sure. Still, you see one or two who may take that venture and go there. But over time, people realize that Al-Shabaab represent reign of terror. They are there to destroy human being, whether it's Somalis or other folks. So, I mean, that problem I don't think will continue to exist, because maybe in 2 years, maybe in 1 year, if the government continue to advance and capture more territories, I believe their recruitment effort will be diminished and reduced.
Question in the back.
Hi, welcome to Columbus. Thanks for being here. My question is about Somaliland. I've come to understand that this is a point of contention among Somali nationals, and though it's been recognized as its own governing state by the international community, can you tell us what are the pros and cons, the positive and negatives of a separate Somaliland government?
I didn't quite hear what you said. I'm sorry. Can you
Asking
repeat?
about Somaliland.
Okay.
And what are the positives and negatives of it being recognized by the international community as its own governing state?
Okay. Well, international community, particularly the most powerful countries, have articulated this issue and explained that they will not favor or recognize Somaliland. They recognize one nation, and that's exactly how the Permanent Council, Permanent Security, correct me that, Security Council, shared with us in many occasions that they will not recognize breakaway states in Somalia, and they would like to keep Somali unity together. So I think that's a positive. However, I believe it's the responsibility of the government to reach out, not only Somaliland, but any opposition groups, to bring them into the tent and establish or start dialogue. And hopefully that somehow will happen, I think. Somehow it will happen. I don't know how soon, but I believe it's very important that that discussion should commence.
Do we have our last question from the audience?
Thank you. I wanted to thank you, Mr. Farmajo, for coming here today to inform us about the situation that was going on in Somalia. And we would like to, thank you for all the great work that you did. My question tonight to you is in regards to any leadership roles that women have. This conflict, as we all know, has been going on for too long, over 2 decades now. And it's a conflict that obviously has been caused by men, created by men. So are women given any leadership roles? Is the TFG doing anything to, harness the, creativity and any roles that women can provide to, bring an end to this conflict? Because a lot of our children are dying of famine, and, we have all these problems. So what is the government doing right now to bring in women for us to stop this conflict? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is one of our shortcomings and needs to be improved, and I support that. I should blame first 4.5 formula, which starts with injustice, not only to women, but also the minority community. But they said that was not just, it was a part of the solution to form the TFG, Transitional Federal Government. And I believe women should play a bigger role and prominent role in Somali politics. But it looks like if we continue this path of 4.5, it will be even more harder and tougher for women to actively participate in the Somali political activities. I favor to see more women participation in the political process. There's a lot of work to be done in that area.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking the Prime Minister Mohammed. Thank you. Thank you. We do have a small gift of appreciation. Thank you for bringing your insight to Columbus, Ohio. Thank you. Please vote how you would determine U.S. foreign policy as it relates to Somalia. Please fill out the survey, and please become a member. We are adjourned. Thank you. If you are a teacher, please exit this exit and then turn to the left. Otherwise, enjoy some beverages and the Somali Relief Showcase.